Be real with me. Is that afternoon energy crash that typically happens around 2 to 4 p.m., is that still happening? And is it still costing you commissions and money left on the table? If the answer to that is yes, then you found the perfect video, because in this video, I'm going to break down exactly why the afternoon crash happens, okay, the consequences of that happening long term and not fixing that issue at the root cause, and then exactly what to do to make sure it never happens again. So, with that being said, you might be asking, oh, okay, cool, great video, because I know it's going to be a great video, but who is this guy and why are you going to tell me about health? I am Sean Martin. I specialize in working with closers, sales professionals, and I literally help them transform their health from a liability to an asset that can serve them and fuel them and propel them into bigger heights in their journey and actually allow them to feel the best that they can while they've earned the money and the success that they have. It's great to make a lot of money, but if you're not healthy enough and present enough, you don't feel good on your day to day to enjoy it, you have to question, was it really worth it? So enough of that. I want to dive in exactly to what this afternoon crash is, right? Just so I can make sure we understand each other, and then exactly what's going on and what's causing that. So first things first, typically we have a very strong morning, right? You get up, maybe you have a little routine, you do what you do, and then we start getting to kind of noon, right? 1 p.m., energy's still pretty good, right? Maybe we had our first meal, maybe you already had your second meal, your second snack by now. Maybe you order Uber Eats, whatever you did, right? And then maybe around like 2:30, 3 p.m. comes, right? You're about 3/4 of the way done. Maybe you've already taken 4 or 5 calls up at this point, and you still maybe have another 2, 3 calls left. But just you feel that wave that kind of comes over. You're just like, I couldn't really take a nap right now, but you can't take a nap, right? Because we have more calls, we have things that we need to do. That energy crash, that time when you just feel like that dip in energy, that's normal to happen, but what happens is if you train the body and the mind in the right way, you can actually make sure it doesn't happen. We all naturally experience this little dip. It's actually called the postprandial dip, and it's this slight minor little dip in energy, but a lot of times because people don't know it's normal, they don't know how to actually do what's supposed to be done to make sure that what's technically normal doesn't even need to happen in the first place. So I know that might sound a little bit confusing, but allow me to explain more. Basically, what I'm saying is that your afternoon crash is caused by a few different things. Number one is that as soon as you got up, you didn't really wait at least probably not even an hour or really 2 hours, which I would recommend. You probably consumed some kind of caffeine pretty early in the day. Now, of course, caffeine is going to give you that boost, right? It's going to give you that natural wake up, especially if you're already kind of waking up, you're a bit groggy, you're not really feeling like you're ready to go. It can help you. It can be that quick fix. But you see, that's what it is. It's a quick fix. So if you can actually delay your caffeine from when you wake up to when you ingest caffeine, if that time delay can be at least an hour and a half or 90 minutes, or really the best would be 2 hours, and then you have your caffeine, you can still get all the benefits from caffeine. Given that, nothing else is going on, there's no other variables that might be causing the crash, you won't have that crash anymore. Because what happens is when you have caffeine very early in the morning, there's a certain receptor in your brain that is responsible for you kind of feeling tired. Caffeine goes in and blocks that receptor from being able to feel that way. But what happens is once the caffeine wears off, then the receptor naturally binds back to where it's supposed to be. And then this neurotransmitter called adenosine, which is responsible for making you feel tired, then goes back to where it was supposed to be when caffeine was actually there temporarily, kind of taking its seat. So once the caffeine wears off and then adenosine comes back, that's when typically we have the energy dip. And typically that can sometimes cost us commissions. That can cost us having a bad day, our relationships, the list goes on. But if we delay our caffeine by 90 minutes or 2 hours right after we wake, again, we can get all those benefits and not have the crash. So if you're waking up at 8 a.m., right, your alarm is at 8 a.m., if you cannot drink caffeine, whether that's coffee, whether that's some kind of maybe tea that's caffeinated, or whether that's an energy drink, which I don't recommend, but even if it's an energy drink, if you can wait till 10 a.m. to take it, that would be phenomenal, okay? And given it's just caffeine, that would solve the issue. Now, let's say, Sean, I'm still having the afternoon crash at like 2 to 4 or around that time frame, but I don't even drink caffeine. So what are you saying here? If it's not caffeine, what it also can be is that maybe you ate some kind of a lunch or maybe some kind of early dinner that was very, very, very not strenuous, but it was a very heavy load of what I mean by nutrients and calories. So let me give you an example, okay? If I get up in the morning, right, and let's just say I have a banana and some yogurt, right, that's fine. And then let's say like 1 p.m. comes and I have like let's say I have like a chicken sandwich, right? And then let's say I have like a little side of like pasta or something. I have some rice or whatever it is, right? I'm just gonna take that example. Pasta, a lot of carbs, right? Rice, a lot of carbs. There's some protein, there's some other stuff in there. But a lot of times you don't understand your body well enough to know what food to give it. You probably haven't tested your own gut. You haven't ran a full blood lab, so you don't really know where your hormone levels are. But a lot of times when you're eating a very kind of carb heavy or even fat heavy or even protein heavy, if you don't know how to balance it correctly, you don't know how to time your meals, it's a lot for your body to take in at one time. And just like performing at the gym or whatever requires energy, digestion itself as an activity requires energy. That's often why you hear, don't have your last meal 2 to 3 hours before bed, because if we eat right before we go to bed or you snack late at night, your body has to use its energy that we really want to be using to cleanse our brain and for sleep, to rest and recover, and has to use that to digest. So it kind of pushes back that timeline. Same thing here, right? If we have a very big lunch, if we have a big meal because we think it's going to give us some more energy, it's actually a lot for our digestive system to process and digest. And that causes a lot of energy, and that takes away energy from our mental state. And that's also what can kind of cause that dip or that crash. Now you might be even thinking, well, okay, well, what's the solution here? The solution here would be to actually test your own gut and figure out what foods and what nutrients do you uniquely need as your own person. And then you can see those ingredients and start making your own meals and kind of tweaking those meals in case you have a certain goal. Maybe you want to hit in the gym or at home, whatever it may be, for macros and micronutrients. But at the end of the day, test your gut, understand, and know, okay, maybe during lunch, my body reacts best well to just a little bit of fat and a little bit higher protein, but not really too much carbs. I like to have my carbs towards the end of the night, right? But you don't know unless you test and unless you apply things and then track those results. But those are all things that I do in my program. If you want to really dial in and level up your health, just click the link down below and we'll get to work. Okay. But if you're still thinking like, no, I don't drink caffeine and I don't even eat lunch, but I still have that crash. So what could be happening? If it's not those two, the only thing that I can possibly think of is that you're probably just really, like really all the way fucked up in general. Maybe your sleep is extremely inconsistent. When your sleep is very inconsistent and you don't have the proper sleep cycles you're going through, and your body doesn't really have that consistency to match that, a lot of times that can cause your energy and your mind to be foggy at different times during the day. If you're not consistent in your actions, your body's not consistent in what it gives you. So you can crash at 1 p.m. and think that's normal, and you can crash at 6 p.m. because you're so messed up and so inconsistent in your sleep. Right? If you don't work out for 4 days, right, and then you work out 7 days straight, for example, right? Again, you're really messing with your body's circadian rhythm, its energy flow, and it's hard to dictate those periods. So if it ain't caffeine and it's not kind of a big lunch that's causing that afternoon crash, it can definitely be your sleep is very inconsistent. Physically, you've exerted yourself too much. You've overreached far more than you're supposed to. And the last one would be like your hormones can just be completely out of whack, and that can cause a host of problems. I mean, if you have elevated cortisol, low testosterone, and let's say your HbA1c is out of range, that can be a perfect reason for why maybe potentially you can be having these issues, and maybe it's not related to caffeine or whatever. So again, the solution here would be for the caffeine to delay that caffeine by 90 minutes or 2 hours after you wake and then consume it. I'd rather you have some spring water in the morning, have some electrolytes or some Celtic sea salt with that, unlock that mental clarity, and you can have your caffeine later and still get those benefits. For that heavy lunch, maybe instead of you're having a very super big lunch, maybe just have a little bit of fruit, maybe have a small little bit of protein, right? And maybe keep the carbs for later. Fruit, right, full of antioxidants, healthy fats, great for your brain and body, right? And then you have protein. Obviously, protein is the building blocks of your cells, okay? And if you have those carbs later, you can have that energy for later on in the day. Now, as for if kind of your sleep and all that stuff is inconsistent, your hormones are out of whack, at that point, I would recommend just go ahead and book a call with me so we can really solve the underlying issues of what you're facing at the root and at the core. We can dial in your health. We'll level up every single area of your life. And you're going to notice that your performance is going to skyrocket. You're going to make more money than you ever have before. And more importantly, you're going to be able to have a super higher quality of life and an extended, longer quality of life, which I know is at the end of the day, we all want. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.